Hello, welcome to Michelle Reads Books. And today we are looking at The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This is the first in the series of Oz books. I don't think that he intended to write a series when he began. So this is an interesting one, and it's very full of dramatic irony. So let's take a look, and we'll read the summary, and then I'll give you my opinion. Dorothy Gale is a young girl who lives with her Aunt Em, Uncle Henry, and dog Toto on a farm on the Kansas prairie. One day, Dorothy and Toto are caught up in a cyclone that deposits them and the farmhouse into Munchkin country in the magical land of Oz. The falling house has killed the Wicked Witch of the East, the evil ruler of the Munchkins. The Good Witch of the North arrives with 3 grateful Munchkins and gives Dorothy the magical silver shoes that originally belonged to the Wicked Witch. Silver, yeah, not ruby. The Good Witch tells Dorothy that the only way she can return home to Kansas is to follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City and ask the great and powerful Wizard of Oz to help her. As Dorothy embarks on her journey, the Good Witch of the North kisses her on the forehead, giving her magical protection from harm. On her way down the yellow brick road, Dorothy attends a banquet held by a Munchkin. The next day, she frees a scarecrow from a pole on which he is hanging, applies oil from a can to the rusted joints of a Tin Woodman, and meets a Cowardly Lion. The scarecrow wants a brain, the Tin Woodman wants a heart, and the lion wants courage. So Dorothy encourages them to journey with her and Toto to the Emerald City to ask for help from the wizard. At one point, the group has to cross a raging river. The Cowardly Lion offers to carry them all across on his back, but the Scarecrow falls into the river and is carried downstream. They find him caught on a branch and are able to rescue him from the fast-moving current. While crossing a field of poppies, Dorothy, Toto, and the lion fall asleep. The Scarecrow and Tin Woodman ask for help from the Queen of the Mice. She organizes her people, and they agree to pull the strangers using rope to pull them out of the poppy field. The travelers arrive at the Emerald City and meet the guardian at the gates, who asks them to wear green-tinted spectacles to keep their eyes from being blinded by the city's brilliance. Each one is called to see the wizard. He appears to Dorothy as a giant head, to the Scarecrow as a lovely lady, to the Tin Woodman as a terrible beast, and to the lion as a ball of fire, with the intention of scaring them all. He agrees to help them all if they kill the Wicked Witch of the West, who rules over Winkie Country. The Guardian warns them that no one has ever managed to defeat the Wicked Witch of the West. The Wicked Witch of the West sees the travelers approaching with her one telescopic eye. She sends a pack of wolves to tear them to pieces, but the Tin Woodman kills them with his axe. He sends a flock of wild crows to peck their eyes out, but the Scarecrow kills them by twisting their necks. She summons a swarm of black bees to sting them, but they are killed while trying to sting the Tin Woodman, while the Scarecrow's straw hides the others. She sends a dozen of her Winkie slaves to attack them, but the lion stands firm to repel them. Finally, she uses the power of her golden cap to send the winged monkeys to capture Dorothy, Toto, and the lion. She cages the lion, scatters the straw of the Scarecrow, and dents the Tin Woodman. Dorothy is forced to become the witch's personal slave, and the witch schemes to steal her silver shoes' powerful magic. The witch successfully tricks Dorothy out of one of her silver shoes. Angered, she throws a bucket of water at the witch, and is shocked to see her melt away. The Winkies rejoice at being freed from her tyranny, and help restuff the Scarecrow and mend the Tin Woodman. They ask the Tin Woodman to become their ruler, which he agrees to do after helping Dorothy return to Kansas. Dorothy finds the witch's golden cap and summons the winged monkeys to carry her and her friends back to the Emerald City. The king of the winged monkeys tells how he and his band are bound by an enchantment to the cap by the sorceress from the north, and that Dorothy may use it to summon them 2 more times. When Dorothy and her friends meet the wizard again, Toto tips over a screen in a corner of the throne room that reveals the wizard, who sadly explains he's a humbug, an ordinary old man who, by a hot air balloon, came to Oz long ago from Omaha. He provides the Scarecrow with a head full of bran, pins, and needles. A lot of bran new brains. the Tin Woodman with a silk heart stuffed with sawdust, and the Lion a potion of courage. Their faith in his power gives these items a focus for their desires. He decides to take Dorothy and Toto home and then go back to Omaha in his balloon. At the send-off, he appoints the Scarecrow to rule in his stead, which he agrees to do after helping Dorothy return to Kansas. Toto chases a kitten in the crowd, and Dorothy goes after him, but the ropes holding the balloon break, and the wizard floats away. Dorothy summons the winged monkeys and tells them to carry her and Toto home, but they explain they cannot cross the desert surrounding Oz. The soldier with the green whiskers informs Dorothy that Glinda, the Good Witch of the South, may be able to help her return home. So the travelers begin their journey to see Glinda's castle in Quadling country. The group also meets with a large dish full of China people made of porcelain. The China people drive them out as much too dangerous for their people. Then the Lion kills a giant spider who is terrorizing the animals in the forest. They ask him to become their king, which he agrees to do after helping Dorothy return to Kansas. Dorothy summons the winged monkeys a third time to fly them over a hill to Glinda's castle. Glinda greets them and reveals that Dorothy's silver shoes can take her anywhere she wishes to go. She embraces her friends, all of whom will be returned to their new kingdoms through Glinda's 3 uses of the golden cap. The Scarecrow to the Emerald City, the Tin Woodman to Winkie Country, and the Lion to the forest. After which the cap will be given to the King of the Winged Monkeys, freeing him and his band. Dorothy takes Toto in her arms, knocks her heels together 3 times, and wishes to return home. Instantly, she begins whirling through the air and rolling on the grass of the Kansas prairie. Up to the farmhouse, though the silver shoes fall off her feet en route and are lost in the deadly desert. She runs to Aunt Em, saying, "I am so glad to be home again." This is an interesting kind of journey story. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a common theme in a lot of adventure stories. And I think that it's very well written in a lot of different ways. First of all, it's very whimsical and very funny. Yeah, with all the little things that happen and the creatures that they meet, like the little porcelain people and stuff, which, by the way, nobody ever talks about. I feel and even in a lot of summaries it's left out, and I'm not sure why. I think it's because they just meet them and then leave. But like, it's part of the whimsy of the Oz books is that there are there's a lot of very different kinds of people and like made out of different like materials. And like the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow, and they think that's important enough to include. Of course, they're much bigger characters, but like the China people, that's so interesting, And then there's a lot of dramatic irony. This is a favorite of L. Frank Baum. Now, if you are careful and pay attention, so the Scarecrow wants brains, right? Which implies that he does not have them, which implies that he is not very intelligent. The Scarecrow is the one who solves all their problems. He comes up with the solutions. So whenever it's like, this is how they did it, it was the Scarecrow's idea, like 90% of the time. And then for the Tin Woodman, who doesn't have a heart, so implying that he's not very compassionate, he's the one who gets emotional whenever someone gets hurt. Yeah? He starts to cry when he steps on an ant. Yeah? So stuff like that. Like, he's extremely, like, feeling kind of a person. And then there's the Cowardly Lion who claims that he's very cowardly and isn't very brave. And it's because he says he's scared when he stands up to people, but he still does it. And that, for me, is a sign of bravery, yeah? And I think everybody would agree on that. So with the Scarecrow being the thinker, the Tin Woodman being the feeler, and the Cowardly Lion being the brave one, like, for example, the lion, like, jumps over a river and brings everybody across. It's just because the Scarecrow was too light and didn't weigh enough, so it couldn't stay on his back very well. And it's just really interesting. And there's a lot of play on like the material they're made out of. And for example, the Scarecrow will very often will get new straw in the Emerald City when they first arrive. Then one of the things they do is to kind of cheer everyone, like perk everyone up. Like Dorothy gets a new dress, and like the Scarecrow gets new straw, and the Tin Woodman gets kind of polished up, and the lion gets his mane groomed. Yeah, and it's really cute, you know. They're like, here, let's take care of our strangers, and you know, they're very hospitable people. But like, there's just so much dramatic irony in the book, and I feel like that's lost a little bit in the movie. And I understand why they changed the shoes from silver to ruby in the movie, and that's because it was the first movie ever made that was in color, and they really wanted the shoes to stand out brightly. But at the same time, like it wasn't. It's not an important detail. It's fine if they're ruby in the movie, but it's just one of those things. Like there's so many details that I think the movie just doesn't get right. There's a good handful that they do, but that it's not clear the dramatic irony, for example, that the Scarecrow is the thinker and that the, you know, Tin Woodman is the feeler and whatever. And but it's that I feel like is missed. Dorothy, who claims that all she wants is to go home, like she's actually a fairly restless person. She's always wanting to go places, and is a very, come on, let's go, let's do that stuff. And if you pay attention to their actions rather than their words, then it is clear that they are not who they claim. And this is true in the entire Oz series. But yeah, it's interesting how this child, all she wants is to go home. She's longing for home, and yet the home itself barely appears in the book. Yeah, and it's described as very gray. Like everything is gray. The entire country is gray. And so I understand why in the movie they made it black and white, and then in Oz, everything is in full color. I really like that transition. But if Dorothy is thinking the entire time, I want to go home because it's better there, and yet she freely admits that Oz is a much better place to be, you know, stuff like that, it's really fascinating. It's really, really fascinating. And I think this is why it's so well loved, because it has so much of that dramatic irony, plus the whimsy, plus the creativity, and that is what makes this an absolute classic of a book. Anyway, so that's my opinion. It's not too long. It took me about 3 hours to read. Leave your opinions down in the comments below, and happy reading.